Oh, sorry. A mirror is something we look in to see usually something on the inside, whereas a window is something we look through to see what's on the outside. Well, both of those have to do with perspectives, how we see things, and how we see things affects our decisions. In this edition of Lead Young Institute, we're going to talk about how you can improve your decision making as a young leader. Welcome to Lead Young Institute. Now, if you want to be a good leader, you need to be good at making decisions, because that's what we expect leaders to do. They need to be able to make good decisions. The problem is that there are many things in human nature that impede our ability to make good quality decisions. So in this mini series in Lead Young Institute, I'm going to talk to you about some of the ways we can improve our decision-making ability. Specifically, now we're going to talk about the attribution theory. The word attribute means to regard something as being caused by someone or something. In other words, it answers the question, what's making this happen? Now, the attribution theory was begun by a social psychologist named Fritz Heider. And he realized that people try to figure out what causes things to happen, but we tend to exaggerate the reasons. So that goes back to what we talked about in the mirror and the window. The mirror is how we look at things internally, and the window is how we look at things externally. So let's talk about these and see how they can help us make better decisions and sometimes how they impede good decisions by leaders. So in the attribution theory, we're going to look at ourselves as leaders, and we're going to look at others. We're also going to look at times we succeed or we do well, and we're going to look at times we fail. Now, this is just one portion of the theory, but it helps us understand why sometimes we make bad decisions and why sometimes we perceive things that are not correct. What Heider and others who study this realize is that when I'm successful, we tend to overestimate how much of it comes from the inside because of me. For example, we say things like, oh, I worked hard, or I'm just a great person. But yet when we fail at something, we tend to overestimate the external. We blame it on things outside of us. We say things like, well, it wasn't fair, or, they cheated. Now, when other people are successful, the tendency is to overestimate the external. We say, oh, they just got lucky, or yeah, someone helped them. If they fail, we tend to overestimate their cause or what's internal. We say, oh yeah, they're lazy, or they're just stupid, or they're bad. So you see, the attribution theory tends to distort our perception of reality, and we respond to our perception of reality. Now let's break those down and see how they affect us as leaders and how we can avoid some of these. So let's look at each cell and uncover some things that will help us make better decisions because it will correct our perceptions. The first one is when we succeed. This is called a self-serving bias, means that we tend to overestimate how much credit is due to us. So we take advantage of it. We look in the mirror and we say, oh my goodness, I am amazing. So it could be a character thing, it could be a talent thing, it could be an IQ thing, any number of things, but it emanates from us. It's looking in that mirror. We think, oh my goodness, I got the good grade because I am just so smart. Or we succeeded at a project, we say because, well, I worked hard, or I'm talented, or I'm just amazing. And yet, this hinders our leading ability because we tend to get proud, we become prideful and start thinking we're better than we really are. We take credit for it. And this creates blind spots, meaning that there are things that we're not good at that will probably hinder us. This also alienates others. You see, so as a leader, we need to have followers, but when we take the credit, when we think that we are so good, people will tend not to like it, and so they won't trust us, and so they'll back off. So the self-serving bias has a lot of hindrances to us as leaders. Now, just as we attribute our success to ourselves, we tend to attribute our failures to things outside. So instead of looking in the mirror, we tend to look through the window and we blame things on the outside. For example, we overestimate the external influence on our failures. We say things like, oh, they stacked the deck, or my family never supported me, or, it was because the weather was bad. Now, how does this affect us as leaders? Well, it tends to make us blame others, or we act like a victim, and a victim is actually when you lose power. You fail to see your weakness and improve, and so you never get better. And others tend to lose respect because we don't improve as a leader. So looking through the window and attributing things in the environment instead of owning it, taking responsibility, causes us to make bad decisions as leaders. Now let's look what happens when we look at other people. Again, people who study this realize that we tend to overestimate the external influence on others' success. Now remember, when we're successful, we tend to look in the mirror and say, oh, it's because of me. But when others are successful, we tend to overestimate what is in the environment outside through the window that caused them to be successful. We say things like, well, the teacher likes them more, or they're just lucky, or they had a head start. Now, how does this affect us as leaders? Well, it causes us to look like sore losers. We underestimate the potential competition of others, and therefore we can also lose respect in the eyes of our team members. So we want to make sure that we don't overestimate and blame things in the external, in the environment that causes others success. And now let's look at what happens when others fail or when others fail us. Again, we tend to overestimate the internal influence of others' failure, meaning we tend to blame them. We say, oh, they're stupid, or they're lazy, or they're unethical, or they're unmotivated, or they're negative. So again, this affects us in our ability to lead, is that we get an improper view of others. We tend to be judgmental. And then we can alienate even really good members on our team because we see the negative in them and then we treat them accordingly. And it tends to alienate them. So all of these are ways that affect us as leaders based on wrong perceptions that we have and a tendency for us to underestimate things and overestimate other things. Now let me give you one more thing. You may be aware of some of these natural perception issues in yourself, but when you're a leader, you're in the people business. That means that you need to help others, especially people on your team, to make sure that they're not being influenced by the attribution theory, the tendency to overestimate internal things and external things. For example, if you start seeing your team members blaming others or making excuses, these are often indicators that they're exaggerating things of the outside, or they're spending too much time looking in the mirror thinking that they're better than they really are. And all of these blaming and excusing behaviors actually reduce a team's performance. They're not taking responsibility, they're not taking ownership, and they're probably not remaining humble. So helping your team members avoid these perception issues will also help them make good decisions, and you'll be a more effective leader yourself. I hope these ideas of looking in the mirror and looking through the window has helped you understand some of the distortions to our perceptions that can hinder our decision making as leaders. If you enjoyed this series, I hope you'll check out other videos in the Lead Young Institute and also this mini series on good decision making as a leader. Obviously, look at some of the resources below in the description area of this video. And as I often say, until we meet again, lead on.